Welcome back, everyone, again to Futsal News. Jake here, Luke's here, and of course, we have our special guest, Gavin Boyer. Gavin is currently competing in Super Liga, which is a league based out in Maryland, Virginia, United States on the East Coast. I won't steal his thunder with any more about his background, but we're going to do a quick interview with Gavin, talk about the league. It's a league that, admittedly, I need to learn more about, so I'm excited for this. So we'll jump right into it. Gavin, how you doing?
Good, good. Very excited to be here. Thank you guys for the time. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for being here to educate us. So
Yeah.
let's start with you first, and let's get to know you first and foremost. Talk to us about how you found futsal and kind of the path to where you're at today.
Yeah. So just like I started with soccer like most kids did, and shortly after started playing futsal when I was 5, 6 years old, and ever since I was a kid, I just exponentially loved futsal a lot more than soccer, even when I was younger. It confuses me when people tell me they don't like playing futsal because it's a lot more touches on the ball, it's less running. So I'm not sure why people wouldn't want to be doing that. And there's no doubt that it makes you a better soccer player as well. Maybe not so much vice versa, but yeah, I've been playing soccer since I was 5 or 6. I went to state cup regionals and nationals nonstop when I was younger. Leading up to college, I lost a little bit of that just because having to get into a Division 1 soccer college, you have to focus a lot more on that. And then coming out of college, or sorry, when I was still in college, nearing my graduation was when I joined the Kings and met Josh Danza, who's the president and founder of the Baltimore Kings. And I've been, his right hand man since, and now the VP of the club, and been learning how to play futsal not just around this area, but around the country and also internationally. So I'm very lucky to be in the position that I'm in, considering um, futsal not being the most popular sport in this country. So even though I want more, I'm very lucky to be where I am, and I'm just really excited to grow this league as much as we possibly can to give others the chance to show their futsal skills and just grow the sport as it is, because it definitely deserves to be grown. So yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah, I think that's something we definitely could all agree with. Before I move on, one thing I do want to remind everybody in the chat: if you're new here and you're here because you're following Gavin, don't forget here at our channel, you guys are welcome to sound off in the chat. Make sure if you have any questions, you post them there, and we'll make sure that we address them with Gavin as well. This isn't just about us babbling on. We want to hear from you, the fans. So make sure and chime in there and let us know what you guys want to hear from Gavin. Tell us about the day you found futsal, Gavin. What was that like compared to soccer, and how did you kind of stumble upon it?
Yeah, so when I was younger, I played in rec soccer, and now my best friend, his father saw me play when I was younger, and he invited me to their practice to try out, and from there it was history. And we started playing futsal. We were the FC Globetrotters. You can actually see them on the blanket behind me. Um, we played
Nice.
when I was 6 years old. I played 2 years up with their team, and the first year doing it all, we actually we won state cup, we won regionals. And back then, I believe that year was in Boston, and that was before they started having it in Atlantic City all the time. And then they had nationals out in Anaheim, California. So we went out to nationals, and we went all the way to the final, and we lost to the team. I can't remember the full name, but it was a funny name. They changed their club name just to make it seem intimidating, to like Green Turtles or something like that. Funny, something like that. And it was eye opening to me, for me, to see as a kid, how this sport that I didn't know existed at the time was so big and so fun. So from there, that pretty much sparked my love for the game. I don't know if I would have loved it as much today if we didn't go as far that year. So I still have to thank my coach then, and my teammates then, for teaching me the game of futsal then when I was only 6 years old. But since then, I competed in state cups every year, and just learning the game as much as I possibly can. And nowadays, I watch it all the time at home. I watch the leagues out in Spain, and as much as I possibly can, because sometimes it's hard to watch those games overseas and being able to have access to it. But yeah, that's how I found futsal, and still playing it today.
That's awesome. So you mentioned that your experience has kind of taken you not only across the country but across the globe with some international play as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so last year was about, I think it was actually about around this time last year when I mentioned Josh Danza. He's the founder of Baltimore Kings. So about this time last year, they had announced him as the new head coach for the AMF USA Men's National Team. And leading up to the World Cup that November, so it was this past November, 2023, out in Mexico, Tijuana. And as soon as he was named the head coach, he talked to me about it, and he said, "Look, I really want to bring you onto the team." We talked about it a bit more, and I actually had to keep it a secret for a while because nothing was set in stone, and rosters weren't announced until weeks before, so I had to keep it in my back pocket and not really share it much with people, which was hard to do. I didn't even share with my mom for a few months, which was one of the harder things to do as well. So yeah, we played out in Mexico, and it was so we ended up playing Australia as our first game. We won 5-4, and I scored 2 goals in that game. So it was my first international game, and it was just insane. Just the environment, the feeling, even though there weren't a million fans there, just the pressure of being there was just so different than what I'm used to. And then we also competed against Paraguay, who was ranked number 1 in the world. I was sitting on my laptop that I'm on now, watching the World Cup draw, waiting to see who we would be playing in the tournament. And I was just crossing my fingers, like, please be Paraguay, because even though some people may not want to play the number 1 ranked team because they want to go far in the tournament, but me, I wanted to be able to play the best. And as soon as I saw we got the number 1 ranked team, I was like, wow, I get to say that I'm going to play the best players in the world in AMF futsal. So yeah, we got pretty creamed that game. It was 11-2. We lost, but the positive from it is that we ended up playing Uruguay in the quarterfinal because we advanced to the playoffs, and we lost to Uruguay 8-1. And Paraguay and Uruguay, the 2 teams we lost to, ended up going to the final and playing each other. And Paraguay only conceded 3 goals the entire tournament, 1 to Uruguay in the final and 2 to us in group stage. So that was cool to be able to say. And then after we were knocked out, we still stayed and watched all the games. We were able to play some friendlies against Brazil and France. So got to play some countries all around the world. It was just an insane experience, and I still have connections with my teammates today, and even some of the opponents today. I still message on WhatsApp some of the players from the French team because they were super cool to talk to. But yeah, it was just an eye-opening experience. Just another, very similar to how when I was younger and seeing nationals for the first time. I was coming here seeing how loved this sport is, not in this country. Because let's be honest, futsal is not the most popular sport in this country. And it probably never will be. I'd be surprised if it is. But in those other countries, they love it. Watching the opening game with Mexico, I think it was Mexico and Colombia, I think was the opening night match. There was just hundreds of people in their music play. It was an insane environment. So yeah.
That's cool. If there's one thing that can be said about the futsal community is, and I think it transcends all practices of futsal, as proven here. There is not a more passionate group of fans than futsal people. The players, the fans, the people involved. It's a very small community, but it's extremely passionate, and I think that's really cool. So it sounds like you got to experience that on a global scale, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm
brushed
gonna,
up on my Spanish as well.
I'm gonna chime in for one question, Gavin, and it's been burning, and I just have to know, how was it watching the AMF referees with the white pants on?
Oh my goodness, it was. So it's funny that you say that. The
Did they wear 'em?
referees. It was great. It was the first thing I noticed. Well, I knew that's what they were going to be wearing because leading up to the tournament, we were watching film, and I was watching film on my own to just try to get used to the rules because it was the first time me going over AMF rules, and it was funny. I feel like I have to give this as background, but we were scheduled to play Australia on the first day at I think it was like 3 p.m. And we actually didn't even start the game until 4:45 because the referees who walked in with their white pants on were an hour and a half late because they had like a some tournament management meeting over in Tijuana, and we were playing our games in Tecate, and it was like a 30-minute drive, but with traffic right along the border, it backed the referees up like literally a whole hour. So we didn't even start until 4:45. And it's funny you say that because when they walked in the door, I remember hearing the fans cheering for them when they walked in, and they were making fun of their pants as they walked in. It was real funny. They were saying it all. Yeah, it was. I can't imagine that being easy running around in those, but adds to the environment, I guess.
Or the Heat running around in a gym with a bunch of other crazed players too. That's got to get hot pretty quick.
Yeah.
So you bring up a good point that I'm interested in too. Is there is several rule differences between AMF style play and say the FIFA futsal rule book. Can you kind of educate the crowd who may not be familiar on some of those major differences, and then at the end of the day, which practice of futsal do you find you prefer more?
Yeah, so I absolutely 100% prefer the FIFA rules. I don't know if it's because I haven't, been used to the AMF rules as much yet, or if it's just because that's what I prefer. But yeah, at AMF, for those watching, there are just a few rule changes. If you go through the whole rule book, there will be a lot, but the major ones are, they're throw-ins instead of kick-ins. So in futsal, you put the ball down on the floor, you kick it in. In AMF, you have to throw it in, but not only do you have to throw it in, both your feet have to be facing forward. If I decide to throw it down the line, I can't have my body facing down the line. I have to be facing the middle of the court. So you technically don't know where a player is going to throw it. It has to be a looping throw. So if I were to throw it as hard as I can to your chest, they would call it, and it would be the other team's throw in and be a turnover. I have to actually throw it up and so for it to loop down. And that was pretty hard, especially when we got a corner, right? Because corners, it's still a throw in. So like when I'm trying to throw the ball someone across the court from a corner, it's hard to not throw it just as hard as I can directly, especially with the ball being much heavier. Unless you had super strong arms and were able to toss the ball really far, it wasn't an easy thing to do. Another rule that they have that is insanely difficult for you to keep up with while the game is going on is the fact that you have to. So let's say the ball is out of bounds for a goalie distribution. Goalie rolls the ball out. As soon as the ball is in play, you can only be in your own half with the ball for 15 seconds. So I guess I'm not sure why that rule was created, but I mean, my guess would be they don't want teams just holding the ball as much as they can in the back of the court, and it keeps the game flowing. So it's a lot of back and forth rather than let me try to build the ball as much as I can and try to find an opening. So sometimes you would see teams just slowly creep up their half for the first 15 seconds, and they would just cross the ball over the half and then bring it back over just so that the clock resets. So as soon as that ball's back on your half, they start counting again. So the referees will start counting in their head. So that's why I said it's difficult to keep up with that because there's no like clock that you're looking like in basketball, how there's a 30-second shot clock. There's no clock to see like how much time is left on that 15 seconds. The referees aren't counting to 15 out loud. They don't have 15 fingers to be pointing up in the air. So that rule is pretty difficult. You honestly just have to try to find your earliest opportunity going forward and maybe check the ball back if you can. A lot of teams, especially those more experienced teams like Paraguay and Colombia and Uruguay, watching them play, they had done it for so long that they literally had like 5, 6, 7 different plays just from the goalie starting with the ball. I'm used to having a lot of plays with the team I play with as kick-ins near the goal or corner kicks, but these teams literally had set plays from their own goalie starting with the ball, and it was really cool to see because they would use them just to get in the other half, and it would work a lot. So there's a few of the rule changes, but yeah, those are the two major ones that I would mention.
Yeah, those are drastically different, and certainly makes for a different style of play, I would imagine too, from the teams. Is that kind of changes things, that lobbing throw as opposed to what you could do with your feet, from the restarts. And so on and so forth, especially, is a big difference. I think everybody notices straight away. Um, and then I've seen in some leagues too across the world, like for example, Australia, where in Victoria, they allow both. You can either kick in or throw in. So
Wow.
it's funny. You see all these kind of splinters off of the original two sets of rules from each kind of governing body that's playing around with futsal right now. So it's just interesting to hear some of those things. So not sure how many people in the crowd are familiar with that, but there is a difference. Let's talk about what you guys are doing right now in that Super Liga. Can you tell us a little bit about your involvement there in the formation of the league, and kind of give us the brochure on Super Liga?
Yeah. So, like I said, Baltimore Kings, we've been around for about 8 years. I wasn't there for the first year. I've been there for the past 7. So, when we first started out, it was, practice here and there. We'd set up a scrimmage friendly here and there with local teams. Back then, it used to be Sporting Maryland, and that was pretty much it. Now there are a few others that we have connections to, but back then it used to just be, let's get together and show up to a game and play, because there really was no structure to train regularly. But as we continued and built our player pool, we kept bringing players in that were training, and we realized we had enough people to create our own league. So we had players that were driving from the Eastern Shore. We still have players that drive from the Eastern Shore and train with us today. Players from Virginia. At some point we had players from Pennsylvania driving down, and Josh and I were talking. We realized we have enough players to make 4 of our own teams and have a little in-house league. So we created League One Futsal about, I think, 4 years ago, and we would have our events throughout the summer, and then also throughout the fall/winter, and then we would take off from that a little bit to prepare for regionals, obviously. But now we train regularly every single week, and it was around, I think it was November of 2022. Another team that's from Southern Maryland, they're called Intensity Futsal. Very, very good team. They used to have a lot of players that played on Sporting Maryland, which is what I was mentioning before. And now they run their own program. They have a lot of youth teams. It's a very big club down here. We had talked to each other and we decided, look, let's try to start a league. Let's try to get some of these teams from either Virginia, Maryland, or even Pennsylvania, and talk to them in regionals and see if we can get a league going. So in the first year, myself, along with Josh and another player who we had on the team at the time, as well as 2 members from Intensity, we created the league. We founded the league. We made an LLC and everything. It was legitimate. And we started as a 4-team league in the first year, which, all things considered, wasn't terrible, because it's the first time the league exists, right? You got to start small and then expand bigger. And we went throughout the year and we all played each other twice, and it was a pretty smooth league. And then going into regionals this past year, we tried connecting with as many teams as we possibly could, after they saw what we were doing with Super Liga. And so, just trying to recruit as best as we could. And, we just started the season up about 3 weeks ago for year 2. And, now we're, even at this point, I'm on the board for the league, obviously, because, I co-founded it. So even now we're already thinking of year 3 and, talking to teams nonstop to see who we can recruit and bring on. It's not the easiest thing. I'm sure you've had some experience with that in the NFPL, but, yeah, that was the formation of Superliga, and the whole goal of it was just to have some sort of sustainable league at a higher level. Other than the NFPL and out on the West Coast, like we were talking about earlier, I don't really know of many professional futsal leagues that exist in this country, and it's really sad, because it's a sport that deserves a lot more and can do a lot more for the country. And yeah, that's just what we're trying to do. We're trying to do our part and trying to create a sustainable league. And, one day when we first started up Superliga, I was thinking about it, and, one day I want this league to be like MASL. I want it to be so popular that people that don't even know who you are come out to games. at this point, the league is so small and our club isn't as big like the Baltimore Blast is, where I have to go and do my own recruiting and bring people out to games. I have to do my own, promotion nonstop just to get people to come to our games. But, at that level, the MASL level, people just go because they know it exists. One day, my goal is to make sure that this league becomes known. So yeah, that's pretty much the start of Super Liga, and yeah, not sure what else.
That's a bit of a unique challenge I think you have compared to maybe some other teams I see that are currently running adult programs. Is you have an MASL club right in your backyard.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, I think of the NFPL teams, there's not a lot of them that have somebody that's, breathing down their neck that's doing MASL in the top tier. And then I know with the Kings that you guys are also involved in MASL as well at the third level.
Yes.
So, that arena soccer monsters are always kind of in the back of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that you have a hard time convincing people to give futsal a try because this established league already exists right in your neighborhood, or do you think that has any impact at all?
Yeah, I definitely say that has helped with the recruitment. Honestly, just the name MASL 3 gets attention because it's rooted from MASL, which a lot of people know. A lot of people know about. I used to go to Baltimore Blast games when I was a kid, and I loved them. Just going there in the environment and being around and seeing pro players play right at home. There isn't an MLS Baltimore team, so that was pretty much the closest to a professional soccer team right in our backyard. So just having the name MASL 3 brought a lot more attention to what we were doing, and we're a futsal primarily a futsal club, so we've been able to, when we're recruiting players to play in MASL 3, we're able to pull players from that and get them interested in futsal as well if they haven't already been interested in futsal. So yeah, it definitely has added to that and made it a bit easier. I mean, one of the teams in Super Liga now who just joined in year 2 is another MASL 3 club who we've competed against for 3 years now. So not even just on the player level, but on the team level, now we're getting teams to commit to futsal more than they would have before. So definitely, yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit. And then I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier with a follow-up question. But while we're on this topic, so it's been talked about a lot, especially on our channel, as we brainstorm how to grow this sport. How many of these MASL 3 teams in particular as a target market and target for team management, experienced team managers. Do you think there is an opportunity bigger than the team that just, I think it was Northern Virginia, right? I think it's a team that joined you guys this year.
Nova FC, yep.
Nova. Yeah. So do you think that the other teams are kind of looking at futsal as a viable option to replace the MASL model? Or do you think this is kind of just one team in particular that has the resources and not necessarily testing the waters?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't use the word replace, but it's definitely having those players think a bit more about what they want to do. I've even seen players that, we have 8 teams in our MASL 3 league right now. So I've seen players from other MASL teams join us for futsal because that team isn't offering futsal at the time. Some of those MASL teams also do outdoor. They play in USL 2, they play in NPSL. There's a league for every single letter of the alphabet now. So, no, I wouldn't use the word replace, but it's definitely having them rethink what they can offer. I think, in a few years, if they realize they're losing a lot of players due to not having futsal and going other places, seeing what it is, I think they might rethink what they want to do. I think, once they get their foot in the door, and that's why I'm so excited that Nova had joined our league this year, because hopefully the other teams in MASL 3 see that and they see it's successful, and maybe they decide to join in year 3. Yeah, so I wouldn't use the word replace, but I think it's definitely making people look around a little bit more and look over their shoulder at what their club can be offering, rather than let's just play in every single outdoor league in the area. So, yeah.
Gavin, do you I don't know what verb I want to use here. Do you mention in conversation when you're talking with these indoor players the fact that futsal has a pathway to something like a World Cup versus
Mhm.
indoor that doesn't have a pathway to something like a World Cup recognized on
Yeah.
an international level?
Mhm. Yeah. So I didn't really think about it that way, and now I'm gonna steal that from you. I'm gonna start using that when I'm trying to recruit players. But no, yeah, that's a great point. And I don't know if that will ever change. I don't know if there are many other countries that play arena soccer, even though it is, it's a very high intense game and it's fun to watch. It's cool watching people, just hit each other into the boards like hockey. A lot of people like hockey simply because of the fact that they can fight in the game and they can throw each other against the boards. And I mean, let's be honest, that's why I like to go to hockey games. I want to see people fight and get aggressive. So yeah, no, that's interesting that you say that because I do think that there can be a pathway with futsal from the youth to the adult level, and we can get into that if you like. But um, we don't have enough backing throughout the country. We don't have the youth structure that they have, and even in soccer, we don't have the youth structure that um, other countries have when preparing their players for international levels. I mean, that's why we don't compete in international tournaments. That's why we can only win the Gold Cup. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But so if we can't even get soccer correctly, in my opinion, it's really hard to see us getting futsal correctly, which sucks to say out loud. But I definitely think there is a route there. It's just a matter of, are we going to do the work to actually set it up? Are we going to have the sponsors and the funding and the structure to allow it to work? Because there's no doubt that futsal definitely makes you a better player in arena or soccer, whatever it is. So those are my thoughts for sure. But that's a good point that you bring up on the international side.
Yeah, it's definitely something we've talked about, especially since the exit from US during CONCACAF and their performance there. The Futsal Focus article that came from it as well. Two of them have really kind of shown a light on the relationship between futsal and arena soccer, and the
Yeah.
argument between should it continue or do we need to catch up with the rest of the world, or is there still a place for it? And that can be argued for hours. But one of the things that I think is really um, hurting futsal is there's not a sustainable model currently for adult clubs. It seems like a
Mhm.
lot of these adult clubs are having a hard time uh, staying in business, more or less. And
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about that because not only has it affected you guys and seen one of your founding members, Intensity, take a break this session, but also from the perspective of the other leagues in the country. You think of FCS based out of Lansing, and they've seen lots of turnover over their tenure. They got a couple of their keystone teams, but the other ones merge and fold all the time. NFPL most recently losing 6 in over one off season, but over their short history losing a total of 12 to 13 teams, and that's not counting the duplicate teams of youth and women's teams during that time frame.
Right.
Why do you think that is, and what do you think Superliga specifically can do about it to kind of change that narrative and put futsal on track?
So this is probably this is like an SAT question for me. I just do not know the answer. Um, it blows my mind. Honestly, it blows my mind to this day. And I debate this with Josh almost every week about how unorganized some of these teams are, and it's very rarely because a team doesn't have the capability of making a futsal team or keeping a futsal team together. It's their it's their inability to want to do it. It's their inability to want or to see the value in having a futsal team. So they just give up. They don't put the same amount of energy that they do towards futsal that they do in soccer. Um, I wish I could say something differently, but you know, or I wish I could sit here and say it's because a lot of these guys, they aren't professionals, so they have families, they have full-time jobs, so they don't have time to commit to it. However, I look at the MASL and it's no different, right? These guys aren't getting paid millions of dollars like $100,000 like players in the MLS are. So if a league like MASL can exist, why can't a futsal league exist? And it's something I've been scratching my head on forever now, and I've looked for answers everywhere I go, but I just can't really wrap my head around it. I think it's just, there is, like you said, there is no model right now that exists to pitch to a region and say, okay, let's start all these teams up, right? We don't have, David Beckham who starts an Inter Miami team and then immediately becomes the most popular team in the league because he's got a name and a brand and all this money. We don't have people like that are committed to futsal to start that beginner model to get people interested and invested in the club, and that's where it starts. We have a foundation of players around this country that want to play futsal and that are able to give their time to futsal. I've seen it firsthand. The guys that we've had on my team for almost 4 years now consistently, we haven't lost many players. We've added some and some have moved and gone and done their own thing in their own life. But I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen it against teams that we play against still today that have the same players for the past few years. So I do believe that it's possible. I think there are enough players around this country that would play if, they were paid a little bit and, given a first year model. But until that happens, it's pretty much teams trying to fend for themselves and start things up on their own, like how we are with Super Liga, right? So I don't have. I wish I had an answer for it. I don't have a direct answer, but I think it just goes. If I had to choose one thing, I think it just goes back to there's just no structure. There's no one invested and no one willing to be that starter up that gets the name futsal going. And I hope that changes one day, but I think it just starts from the investment in the sport.
A little bit of follow up to that too is, the tournament you guys, when you reference that regional tournament, for the USFF regional tournament in Atlantic City, is one of the biggest in the country and recently broke any known records of attendance and participation.
Yeah.
And one thing that Luke and I have talked about offline before, and we've talked to other people about before, is it's a bit of a head scratcher that the East Coast doesn't already have an established league prior to Super Liga. When you think about your guys's the age of this league, it's new, and the fact that we don't see teams like New York, Ecuador, Safria, Intensity still being active, things like that. But this tournament right in the backyard is one of the biggest and overshadows most other leagues in size. Why do you think that is? Why are we only seeing a bit of a tournament culture, especially considering what is, the stereotypical dynamic of an East Coast, and why isn't it translating to something that's a little more long term?
Yeah. So, I'll try my best to answer this without, being disrespectful towards any organizations. But, if we're all being honest with each other, we can all do a bit better with the with the organization of this sport, especially on the East Coast, where there's so much potential. But it's funny you say that. I guess I'll start off with saying, it's crazy to say out loud that for a Northeast regional tournament, any team anywhere can join. It's even at the state level now. We have Maryland State Cup. We had a 2011 boys team that I coached 2 years ago at State Cup, and their teams from Virginia playing in Maryland State Cup. And I'm just looking around like, what is this? I don't understand. There's no structure here. Are we just accepting teams because we want more names out there? But what's the point of having a Maryland and a Virginia State Cup if all the same teams are just going to be in both tournaments? So it's interesting that we have a Northeast regional tournament, but we have teams literally from Brazil, not even from this country, coming over and playing in our tournaments, which, I'm thankful for, playing against better competition. But it's just interesting that, we allow teams from Florida, from California, from all these different states to come and play in Northeast regional futsal when they're not from the Northeast region. And yeah, the region one, I mean, I haven't been to region 2 or region 3 or region 4 regionals, but based on the numbers and what I see online, Northeast regionals is bigger than nationals because, in the middle of the summer, my guess is that most men's teams and women's teams and youth teams, they don't have the structure to commit to a tournament all the way across the country into Las Vegas. So, most of the teams we get in the Northeast region are spanning from Virginia all the way up to New York. And then we get trickling teams from all over the country. But it's just interesting that we have that. I'm not sure, who was the one behind allowing that, or, when that started or when it will end. But it's just interesting that we have teams from wherever playing in the Northeast region. It's kind of like how they accepted they allowed Japan and Qatar to play in the Copa America last year. It's like, okay, they're not in America, but I guess this is, it fills teams, it fills numbers, so it makes it more competitive. But yeah, I mean, you start to see more of a tournament style format throughout the country, and I don't know if it's because they think it'd be too difficult to start leagues around the country and it'd be too much. Maybe they don't see the value in that or what they can earn from it in return, and maybe they just decide to do tournaments to allow anybody into tournaments and make what they can make off of that. But yeah, it's another head scratcher for me as well. I don't know why we can't at least start in this region where there's such a dense population of both soccer and futsal clubs in this area. It blows my mind that we don't have a league format here yet. But yeah, I've noticed the tournament format. I've noticed there are men's clubs that only exist because they make tournament teams. And this is what I meant when I said I don't want to be disrespectful to other teams, but there are teams that go to regionals every year that just grab guys from arena teams and they make these super good tournament championship teams, and it's fun to watch and they're all really good at futsal. But can you do it on a regular level? Can you bring these guys together every week to train? And if you can do it for arena, and why can't we do it on the futsal level? I think if we just had someone that, again, would just be the person to start it up and show an example, we can actually have this sustainable team, then others would do it and others would follow. But, we even, we play against teams in regionals that we've watched every single year in regionals prior, but throughout the year, they're doing other things. They're playing outdoor soccer, which, again, nothing disrespectful to them. That's what they decide to do as their club. I don't blame them. There isn't a futsal structure, so maybe they just decide to do things that work better for them. But we play against teams. A lot of the teams that win regionals end up being teams that just put players together that know futsal but don't actually train together. So yeah, it's almost like an international team where you get guys all around the country to go play. Because other than 2 players that were on my team when we went to Mexico, I had never played with the other players on my team before. So it was sort of like making a tournament team like that, but that's a little different because you're representing your country. But yeah, I guess. Sorry, I can't really give a direct answer, but
I'm gonna interject. I'm gonna interject here, Gavin, and kind of like add my 2 cents onto what you said, and I 100% agree with you. With what's happening, but I think number one, it shows there are people out there that are down for this. But I think what that brings me up to point 2. The caveat is if you think about the tournament, your facility is taken care of, and all the planning is all taken care of.
Nobody has
All
to
you
do
got to
it.
do is call the boys. So and you only have to do it for one weekend. So I think that crops up the main problem, which is consistency and longevity and planning.
Yep.
And it's just and I love my soccer community. I love my futsal community. I love my indoor guys, but we're all a bunch of knuckleheads, and we all just want to play. That's all we want to do. Because I've run my own facility. That's all guys want to do is they just want to play. They don't care. They're like, when I have my facility, they're like, Luke, just put it together. Just shut up, stop talking, just let us play.
And so that's what I mean. Like, I don't blame.
I think you're right, Gavin, that we need
Yeah.
someone. We need the David Fresquez's of the world. We need
Mhm.
the Kawe Martins of the world. We need the Gavin Boyers of the world. We need, the Josh Danzas of the world to step up into in that gap to say, yes, we're going to put this season together and we're going to get together these facilities. You know what I mean? We're going to get together these schedules. We're going to get together these, whatever playoffs and get it done. And Jake and I on here literally, like we cry out to the audience, step up. If you want to do this, come out of the woodwork. You can contribute. You are valuable in this community. Step up and Jake and I are here to facilitate that. We're here to network over YouTube, telling people, hey, Gavin's out here doing his thing. Call him, get on board. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I mean when I say I don't blame players for not
No.
feeling as invested, because
No.
all they have to do is, it's an easier pitch to people
Sure.
when you call someone up and say, "Hey, can you come to Atlantic City for a whole weekend? They got a casino, they got all these other distractions, and we get to play the sport that we like to play
Yeah.
for a couple bucks." And a lot of these big teams will have sponsors anyway, or they'll funnel money from their youth teams to put a men's team in, and it's an easier pitch for them to accept to go. So yeah, I don't blame players for
No.
not feeling as invested either, because they just want to play. They don't want to have to deal with all the other stuff. So
Right. Agreed.
Sure. Well, I know we got some scheduling conflicts tonight, so we can't have Gavin all night, but we will continue the stream. I do have one kind of exit question for you, Gavin, and it is going to be more SAT questions. I apologize, but I'm really curious what you think about this with the way the conversation's gone tonight. And that is, so, you've kind of already got a taste of, kind of the stuff we're talking about, planning, controlling what happens in futsal, what is prioritized within Superliga, having an impact on that board, so to speak, of people that formed it. So if you were in full control of futsal in the United States, what's your priority and focus to grow it? And what do you think is the missing component that's holding it back that you would address right away?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit to add on to what I was already saying, or what you can imply from what I was saying. I really challenge this country, or whatever governing body is head of futsal, AMF, USFF, USF, whatever, USYF, whatever it is. I really challenge this country, or whoever's in charge of it, to create a youth environment for futsal. I coach 3 teams myself, 3 youth soccer teams, and I bring my boys out to as many games as I possibly can to come watch me play, for several reasons. And it's also because I want to instill that love for futsal. And we play futsal over the winter, and I see the kids love it more and more and more the more they watch me and my team play, because what they see. And it's the same thing with soccer, right? You grow up watching professional players and you idolize them. I have cleats signed by Freddie Adu still on my dresser right now. And we all know how he ended up. He wasn't the greatest. He went overseas. He wasn't the greatest. But when I was young, I went and saw him and met him several times when he was at DC United. It was crazy to hear that he's the youngest player to ever play in the MLS, 16 years old, balling out and beating everybody up in that league. And, from there, that instilled my love for the game of soccer. And, I grew from there. So, I really think if we have a system that the kids can watch, then it kind of works itself out. We don't even need to do anything, because then you have all this young generation of players growing up wanting to play futsal. But right now it doesn't exist. There isn't an influx of young kids playing futsal that want to continue playing futsal either equally as much as soccer or more than soccer, because they don't have someone to watch. If I were to go ask every kid that I coach, if I were to ask them, do you know who El Pozo Murcia is? They look at me like, what did you just say to me? If I show up wearing the El Pozo jersey that I have to practice, kids probably looked at me like, why is there packaged meat on your shirt? What is that? Like, what are you wearing? Whose jersey is that? So like, it's kind of just a shaking my head moment. It sucks to say that we don't have a young generation to watch the older guys and be inspired from it. But I think that's where it starts. If we don't have a youth that want to continue what we want to do, then what's the point of trying to set something up now, right? What's the point of trying to set up a national league for futsal if our kids aren't going to see it, So I that's why, when we build Super Liga, I look to the future. I want to be able to have a really popular league that people know because kids are coming to watch. I want them to go to school and tell their kids, like, we just watched the Baltimore Kings play. You have any idea who they are? We try to do our best and do our part, but it's just not enough, unfortunately, around the country. They don't have a platform to watch, to be inspired by. So I challenge whoever's in charge of futsal in this country to do better with that, and to have a youth environment that kids can play that sport.
That's awesome. No, I think that's a valid point. As we see a lot of youth involvement up to a certain point, and then it dies. Right around the age of 12, and
Yep.
That is definitely a big gap. And I think you brought up another good point that's going to lead into a tangent after. We will hold you because I know you got things to do, but I think my next tangent will be around your comment of whoever's in charge of futsal. That's also that
Yeah.
comment in of itself is a really good point as to why there's a gap. So I will spare you from that tangent if you need
say
to.
Nothing else.
Yeah, you lit the fuse. He's covered his ears and he's taken off. But Gavin, thank you so much for spending the time you did have with us this evening. I know it was tight in the schedule and a little bit last minute, but thank you for letting us peer into Super Liga a little bit. Anything you want to plug about your team or the league and how we can follow along before you take off?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having me. Our team, like I said a few weeks ago, we started our Super Liga season. So, you can follow us on YouTube. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram, Baltimore Pro Futsal. And you can watch some of our games being live streamed. Our next one will not be until June 22nd. We still have a few weeks until then. But yeah, follow us and keep up with all the things that we're posting. Right now, we're doing a lot of stuff with the youth and community, like the youth tournament that I'm in charge of on Saturday. We have all the Kings coming and playing with the kids. So follow us, get to know futsal more, research it. Do your best to make people love the sport.
Awesome. Very cool. One last comment I want to capture before we lose you is Patrick Fleming wants to know who your favorite teammate is. I have a feeling that's a loaded question.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to upset Pat by not saying his name, but yeah.
This could lead into a friendly slide tackle later in your career, so I'll just keep that in mind.
Well, we actually had two teammates injure each other not long ago. No, Pat's great. Pat's great. He's a great teammate. I've known him since I was a kid, so it's awesome that he's tuning in right now.
That is awesome, Pat. Thanks for being here. Thomas, I see in the chat too. Thank you guys very much, and feel free to stick around as we continue to chat about futsal in the U.S. And then Gavin, we'll get you on another time and kind of dive into it even more.
Anytime you want to talk futsal, I'm there.
Perfect. Love it.
Thanks, Gavin.
Thanks again, Gavin.
Thank you so much. Bye.
So Luke, let's jump into that kind of final comment because I've made it a bit of a tradition on these live streams to ask the people that come on what would you do if you had the keys to the castle? How would you change futsal? And he brings up a good point in the comment that whoever's in charge of futsal, we need more help. We need more attention. And we've, in recent videos and live streams, kind of addressed that. So I don't want to beat the horse to death, but at the same time, it needs to be readdressed. Is there's a lot of leadership in futsal right now that are distracted by other ventures. Right. And there's no clear direction to who is actually in charge of cultivating the sport here.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think about what he said and where futsal needs to go from here to sustain things like Super Liga?
Well, I think the question in and of itself, I kind of want to analyze it. Number one, who asked the question? It's Gavin Boyer. I mean, let's break it down. He's heading up. He sits on the board. He's in charge. He's representing the Super Liga on the East Coast. East Coast, right? The most popular, dense part of America by far. Should be a bustling hub of futsal. It should be. So someone in charge of a league where futsal should be the best on the East Coast posed the question, whoever's in charge. He doesn't know. That implies he doesn't know. And I'm not slighting him. I'm not saying he's a dum-dum by any means. I'm saying, holy crap. Like, what is going on? Like, what is happening?
Right.
What's really happening? And I think we all need to ask that, and I think a few people would, come in and say, well, I've been around and, my resume this and my resume that. And I'm like, yeah, but like, who's in charge? And I think a lot of people will claim that title. And I think, I have anecdotes to talk about people flexing on me and claiming who's in charge. But I think again that's the problem. No one really knows. I think U.S. soccer and the U.S. Federation needs to take charge. I think they do. I think it's the FIFA certified. I think we need to come out of the shadows of an extended team, and I think we need a proper shout from who's in charge. Is it still Sunil Gulati or whatever that guy's name is, or who is on there? I don't even know. What a mess. But I think it needs to be taken seriously. I think it needs to be taken out of like the shadows and put front and center and put some focus on it. But again, we know the answer to that question is no one's going to do it, and it's not going to happen. And well, this is opinion now. I'm going into opinion land, which is, and I said it when I was with Gavin, is this is a call to all the people who the David Fresquez, which is, what's up, David? How are you?
David.
The people like that who are out there just saying, well, this sport is great. Other countries have done it. And who's in charge? Bottom line, we are. We're in charge because no one else is going to do it. That's my opinion.
There is an interesting model going on. Well, first of all, David, hello. Good to see you, buddy. There's an interesting model going on in England right now where futsal people are taking care of futsal, and I can't help but be captivated by it. And I would love, I'm trying to get the guy's name. I think I finally found it. I'm going to try and reach out to him through some connections I have in England. But I would love to talk to them about how that conversation started with their FA. But the English FA does not manage futsal anymore in England. They have essentially outsourced that to a third party. The organization's called England Futsal. They report directly to the English FA. They have to abide by their standards, and there's certainly some things there that there's some give and take. They have to abide by FA standards and kind of be an extension of them. They take all of that overhead off of their plate because they're clearly not interested in managing it. They've been able to hand it off to somebody else. They get to use the likeness of the logos. They get to build this thing up. There's certain approvals in place. But it seems to be working. The English national team program is reviving in a great way and is evolving in a great way there in just a few years under that program. I think 2 years, only 2 years. And I can't help but wonder what that would look like here in the United States. Obviously, there's different things. We don't have quite the ministries and obviously the practices will not be the same governing body to governing body, but there's got to be a way that those of us who truly care about the sport can take care of it. And, there's too many cooks in the kitchen, and all of those cooks have alternative motives, whether it be their involvement in arena soccer, whether it be their own personal stake in making money at this. At the end of the day, what makes the United States really great at sports is the way we found a way to capitalize it, make it a business and make it sustainable. That's why NBA is so big. That's why NFL is so big. That's why any of these organizations are as big as they are in the United States, MLB. Other countries are starting to figure it out and catch up in certain sports, but not all of them like we are. Yeah. And I think that it's a miss because people aren't willing to share. And I've used this phrase before. They're not willing to share a piece of the pie, and that piece of the pie doesn't exist yet.
Yes.
There's a certain level of greed going on with a lot of our organizational leaders, and it's an epidemic that starts from the top and goes all the way down through. And it's not unique to futsal either. We see it in soccer. We see it in basketball. We see it in AAU. We see it in these programs where there's these clubs and academies that are in it for the paycheck. They're not really teaching the kids anything. There's leagues that are collecting fees and really not giving anything back to these clubs, and they're literally just leeching them dry of their funding to keep them from being sustainable. And I think that Dushan said it best in an interview when he said that you cannot start building a house from the roof.
Yeah.
And that is what a lot of current leaders in futsal right now think they're doing, is they think they're on the roof.
Yeah.
And I think that's nuts. Or maybe they think they're on the second story and they're building the roof, but they haven't even laid the foundation of the basement yet.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of our sport, is if you're just joining the sport, if you're new to futsal, in an exciting kind of way, congratulations, you've entered at the ground level. You're going to be able to watch something really cool at a grassroots level grow, as long as we find a way to get around these roadblocks. But in the other hand, too, is there's no problem with dreaming, but we got to be real here too.
Yeah.
And the reality is we're nowhere near where we need to be. And it shows. We can't even get out of a CONCACAF where the CONCACAF region isn't even investing in futsal. But there are certainly national teams that are, and we can't even keep up with those national teams that have no support from their region.
Yeah.
So, it says a lot about where the United States stands right now.
We're playing against teams in the CONCACAF region who have so much passion for the game that they borrowed shoes or had shoes donated because they can't even get shoes. To me, I feel like this is the miss. This is truly the miss, is that we're so focused on capitalizing that we forget the essence. We forget the essence of the game. Like I said, Jake, and you said it too, like, I'm all for capitalism. I'm all for making money. But the thing is you can't have a piece of a pie that doesn't exist. You have to make that pie first. And you're right. People are grabbing at air. They're grabbing at something that doesn't exist yet. And I feel like, making money in youth systems and all that. And I feel like, let it grow up. Like, you're not going to go to like a toddler and say, punch the clock. Here's your shovel. Go dig a hole. You're going to help them go to school, learn, work out a little bit, get a little bit more strong, get a little bit more knowledge. And then when they're, 18, you hand them a shovel and say, get out, go do your thing. I just feel like we have a toddler, or maybe even a baby in futsal. We have to take care of it. We have to grow it. We have to educate it. We have to, coddle it along to where it's up on its 2 feet and moving around, and then we can kind of like start directing it and then like grow it into a good thing. And I just think we missed that. I think we missed that.
For sure. And I think one of the things that's exciting for me is, although Super Liga is in its infancy and is currently small, which there's nothing wrong with that. We've seen glimpses of sustainability from leagues like FCS for the same reasons that, hey, let's go slow. Let's get this right. Let's find the right teams to partner with. I mentioned that Intensity has stepped away this year. That's, as your second place team that was tied with Kings, and only difference was goal differential, and seeing them go away is certainly disheartening. But the fact that they found a sustainable replacement in a team that is used to playing and has a core group of guys, although it's an arena soccer team, I think that's okay. I don't mind these guys getting involved and being involved in both sides, but at a club level. But I think where we run into issues is these guys that are involved in both at a director level or at an executive level.
Yes.
Within our youth leagues. And it's clear in the way that just using USYF as an example, and they're not the only guilty party, in the way that they push kids from futsal to arena soccer after a certain age.
Yeah.
After we did that video on why I thought the US failed, I got a lot of interesting emails from players, coaches. I got phone calls from ex-players of the national team. We got some really interesting feedback from that video. And the common denominator was that MASL has influence on all of the decision makers in futsal because they're involved and that's where the money is.
Yeah.
And you can't, and one person who's asked to remain anonymous, but whose opinion I appreciate a lot and respect a ton, said, and I'm kind of paraphrasing what he said a little bit, but what he said was that you almost can't blame them for that. And they might not even know realize that they're sucking away from futsal, because your human nature is to rely on what is taking care of you, and that is what is paying you and putting food on your table, and that's
Right.
MASL right now.
Right.
But we've got to find a way to make a division there. It's got to happen. It's just got to happen.
Yeah, I think to a certain point, I hear what you're saying with the not understanding, but to another point, there are people in both camps. They're in both camps, and they're playing both sides. And to me, I feel like that can't happen anymore. If you're gonna be on for futsal, be on for futsal. I feel like if you're gonna be on for MASL, be on for MASL. I have no problem with arena soccer. Do your thing. Do I like it? Do I prefer it? No, I prefer futsal. But the thing is like when you're playing both sides, when we're trying to grow something and you're kind of leeching off the tail end, I feel like we need to stop that and have that stop and go into the futsal realm and like be in for futsal. I just feel like, especially if you're in a leadership position, and you're guiding things and you're pushing things, be a man of your word or be a woman of your word, and do what's right for the right things. You know what I mean? And stop, beating the drum for futsal and how great it is and all the benefits, and then sideswipe them into MASL. I don't know. I just don't agree with it, and that's an opinion. So
there's a lot of old guard involved in futsal right now. When you look at a lot of the directors or executives or faces of futsal right now, they are certainly in their latter years, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not trying to turn this into an age discrimination live on YouTube, but these guys got us here. Okay. I appreciate what they've done for the sport. I appreciate them growing it to the level it's at. We've created they have created in the United States, I should say, a strong youth project. We see a lot of young, when I say youth, I mean young, the young kids are involved, which is great. We're seeing it used as that tool to grow as an individual in soccer, which is fantastic. But there's this massive gap when these kids hit 11, 12, 13, where they have to decide if they're going to continue to pursue futsal in front of the same 5 adults that have been recruiting and scouting them for their entire lives, or move on to things like ECNL or their high school team, where they'll get in front of some fresh faces and maybe even win a scholarship somewhere or better. Again, can't blame the kids for taking that path, because there is no clear path beyond here. They would be the trailblazers, and it's not their job. Their job is to be kids and be youthful and to develop themselves. It's us as adults that should be blazing that path for them, and we're not doing it. And one of the things that stands out to me the most was an email I received from a parent that when they expressed some joy in their kid getting some true futsal opportunities overseas, the person he was talking to, who is very high up in their particular organization, didn't even look impressed and didn't even acknowledge it or congratulate them or show any kind of joy out of the fact that they were going anywhere other than MASL. And this is old news, but I'd even go back to the fact that even our own leagues like NFPL advertising an MASL combine. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Even our adult league doesn't want to keep our guys. They want to push them to MASL. That makes no sense.
Yeah.
That's your competition, dude. Like, why are you doing that? And I'm happy for MASL and what they have. Good for them. It's just not my cup of tea. Conversely, I just last weekend went and really enjoyed watching old arena soccer players come back for an anniversary game for charity and put on a hell of a show, and it was incredibly entertaining. And they didn't play by futsal rules. Otto got some pass backs 3 or 4 times, on a possession, and they played with an extra man on the court because these guys are, these are players that are celebrating their team's 40th anniversary. So we got to make some concessions and have some fun. And it's a charity game, and it was still a great time. And I didn't notice that, other than just jokingly in passing with the other academy coaches that were there. Like, oh boy, there's Otto not following the rules, but it was a good freaking time. And there was almost 600 people in the building enjoying it too. And that's what kills me is it's there's a desire and a need for it on a small level, that we could build something grassroots, even if even if we don't have that big backing of the investors that were there for PFL for that fleeting moment, there's no reason we can't build something up and then call these investors and say, hey, look, we think we've kind of hacked it at a grassroots level. Now's your guys' time to hit while the iron's hot. We've created the path. Now you guys put some funding behind it that'll solidify that path.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would argue that there's even still a place for whatever that league is that blazes the path as, evolve into the USL to whatever a MLS equivalent is in futsal.
Right.
I mean, that's really where it all started anyway. How many of these MLS teams, especially in your neck of the woods, Luke, that their roots are in other leagues that pre-existed even the MLS?
Yeah. Timbers, Whitecaps,
Sounders,
San Jose.
Yeah. I mean, one of the guys I chatted with at this charity event last week played for the Sounders back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And he was playing in arena soccer and got recruited on loan to the Sounders for a year.
Huh.
And then went to San Jose after that and played for the San Jose team that was in USL. And I mean, or the equivalent back then anyway. And it's like, man, it could totally happen.
Yeah.
It could totally happen.
And to me, like, Gavin made a good point. And these guys come together and go to Atlantic City, and it's great. It just shows that the population is there. The population of players that want to play is there. And again, it's I'm going to keep crying out, like, if you're out there and you feel like you have something to offer, or you feel like you're like, what can I do? You can do a lot. Like, Jake made a futsal news channel. I jumped in a Grand Rapids Olay stream and just said, how can I help? And I just jumped in because I love the sport. We want more of you guys that love the sport. And hey, listen, can you put a ragtag bunch of guys together and start playing, at a low level? Sure. And then maybe you get good at it and you organize. I just think we need organization past that 12-year-old range. And I think we can do something with that, especially with a lot of people coming together. Like, who knows? You start playing, you meet someone else and they help you, and you grow and you grow and you grow. And the more you go out there and the more you jump into this community, I've never been disappointed in the futsal community. I've never been disappointed. The more I get into it, the more I grow. Sure, there's politics. Sure, there's this and that. But some of the relationships I've made and some of the things the experiences I've had in futsal, just running my big fat mouth, have been great. I would have never met Jake. I would have never met Juan Galindo. I would have never met Rudy. I would have never met Dave Fresquez. I would have never, the list goes on and on and on. And it's just, it keeps growing. And I feel like if we make this call for all you guys to jump out of the woodwork, play futsal, organize, let's do this. I feel like, again, I'm going to go back to my comment earlier. We're in control. They don't care what we do. We're in control. And if we want this, if we want this enough, we'll get it. And I truly believe in that. I truly believe in, if you want it, you can get it. You'll find a way. And futsal community, let's, form up, form our final, what is it called? The final transformation Pokemon. I'm not out of my depth here, so I'll just stop. Our final form. There it is.
Yes. Well, here's the thing too. Like, I understand, and I get a lot of this feedback in the behind the scenes communications I get from this channel. And like Luke said, I mean, listen, I've said it 100 times on this channel. I am just a random dude in a basement. And I have found a way. All right. I mean, I am nuts. Like, I am watching live streams every night. We are we did all of those CONCACAF watch parties. I'm making videos in my spare time the best I can. I know I'm behind on that, guys, by the way. More coming, I promise. But we've done these live streams and met some really cool people through these live streams, but there's an innumerable amount of people that we've met behind the scenes that are just as interesting and cool and curious that don't get the spotlight. And part of the reason for that is on their own is they don't want to be in the spotlight. They like being behind the scenes, and they have a lot to lose because of the politics that exist in sports.
Yeah.
Whether it be opportunities for their children, whether it be opportunities for their clubs.
True.
But we get a lot of feedback on what we've covered here, and I take a lot of pride in the fact that this channel has remained mainly neutral. I've been able to help myself sometimes where we've given our opinion here, but one can't help it when you're behind a microphone as much as we are. But I think that I also understand that I'm in a unique position that I have nothing to lose. I am not an owner of a league. I am not an owner of a club. I do not have kids old enough to be in the sport right now, and don't know if I ever will have kids that participate in this sport. But if they do, I hope they love it as much as I do. And I hope by the time they join that some of these old geezers are out of the way and we can move on from that and have some fresh thinking. But if I need to be that guy that says what everybody's thinking, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm here for you guys to do that. I'm happy to be that sounding board. Reach out to me. All of my contact information is listed in the description of this video. Clip this moment and share it with your friends. If you need somebody to kind of be the shining light on something that you think's wrong in futsal, I'm happy to cover it. Give me the information, call me, email me, whatever.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out, and we'll figure out a way to get involved. Luke and I are starving for ways to get more involved in futsal in the United States. And we're not going to call anybody out today, but maybe in the future, but not today. But we've reached out to several folks over the last couple of years that just don't want to play. They don't want to play along with us. They for some reason think that we're going to encroach on what they think is a cash cow that doesn't exist. So
we're going to take their pie.
Yeah. And there's none. I'm not even bringing a fork. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
So, the reality is we just want to help. We're passionate. We love this sport. We know you guys do too that are listening in. If there's something I can do or something I can cover that you guys are interested in, please share it with me. Let's shine a light in a positive way on what can be done. And let's force some change. Let's take control of our sport and make it bigger than it is, for sure. Yeah. It needs to happen.
Yeah. And I think, final note from me is, I've said this to Jake, and I'm pretty sure he shares the same sentiment, which is, we're not here for futsal news. We're not here for NFPL. We're not here for FCS. We're not here for Super Liga. We're here for futsal. And that's it, period. Especially in the United States, but everywhere, because it's a global sport. But that's my final thought.
Yeah. And I'm going to curse here. So if you got kids watching this or watching the recording, go ahead and pause it or walk out of the room or whatever you need to do. But I don't give a shit about this channel. Okay. What I care about is futsal. And that's very important what Luke said, and that I want to move on is I did not make this channel to make it about me. I made it to make it about you guys. That's why we bring guests on here, and we rarely talk, just the two of us, Luke and I. We try to keep that at a minimum, although there is certainly things we need and want to talk about and create a platform and encourage you guys to be a part of it. If it has to be the two of us, sometimes fine. But our main goal is to shine a spotlight on the other stars in this sport. And there are so many that exist that we haven't even reached out to yet. And we want to try and keep it neutral and get both sides of the story. Just kind of as a follow-up, and my last take is, I put out my opinion, which is very uncommon in a video, after the CONCACAF debacle. And I called out the youth organizations in this country. And then in good faith, I reached out to them, and I shared the link to that video and said, hey, look, this was my take. Since then, there's been a Futsal News article follow-up that has shined some light on some things that I didn't know about. But, in the essence of neutrality and keeping things healthy and growing and not just being negative and degrading, would you come on the channel and talk to us and justify where we're at today? I've heard back from one of those organizations, and it wasn't a commitment to being on the channel. They're like, well, what do you want to ask? I don't blame them for figuring that out first. That's good business, but at least there's a conversation there. But the other two, crickets. They don't want to talk about it because they know what I said was right. Hopefully continuing to call it out and continuing to make change will make change. So I hope you guys will follow us along for that journey as we continue to find ways that Luke and I can get involved and bring you along for this journey to do something different. So that'll be our goal from here, as always. But yeah, that's with that in mind, guys, I think that we've shared our opinion at the end of this enough, but we appreciate everyone that tuned in, especially those of you that came from Gavin's circle. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. If you liked what you saw, make sure you stick around and follow some more of our content and help us grow the sport of futsal. And we'll continue down this road. Join us in the Discord. Find that link in the description where we post links to games. If we can get some stream links from Gavin on future Super Liga games, like he mentioned, then we'll be sharing those. And certainly advertising this league, and hopefully it grows. And as we find other things, we'll do the same. And we've just found the Chilean league, right, Luke? And we've had some fun with that the other night.
That was good.
So we're constantly finding new ways to share futsal. So join us there in the Discord and continue the conversation. And until I hear from you guys next time, don't forget to play with your soul.